Well, good morning and welcome to this week's Talk About It Tuesday. We're here partnering with the Department of Veterans Affairs, and we want to talk to you about the questions that you have concerning VA and VA careers. So it's Tuesday, and we've already received our questions from you. So let's talk about it. We had questions that came in from all over the country, and we thank you for submitting those questions. The first question that we're going to talk about right now came in from, came in from Yvonne. Yvonne says, I'm a disabled veteran and a recent master's graduate in project management. I'm currently working on my doctoral program in organizational management, and I currently work as a procurement coordinator, but I'm trying to transition to another career field. What is a good strategy to take the next steps? Well, first of all, Yvonne, thank you for your question. And I see that you have a lot going on. Looks like you have a lot of experience in project management, and you're thinking you want to do something else at this time. Well, that's never a bad thing, because as we grow and as we develop in life, sometimes our career paths change. I would say the first thing that you need to do is determine what is it that you feel would be fulfilling for you at this time. And then from there, try to seek a job that would be able to utilize your your functions, your capabilities, the things that you want to do in that particular job. Now, transitioning into another career field may mean that you may have to go back to the bottom and work your way up. If you're okay with that, I say go for it. Okay. Thank you again, Yvonne, for your question. We have a question that came in from Prudence. And Prudence is asking, what do you recommend I do as I wait for a response from the VA? I've applied for a job and I've been waiting. Do you recommend I make a phone call to Human Resources or just wait? And approximately how long should I wait? Prudence, first, thank you for your question. And I will say that, as I've said in other shows, sometimes the wait time is longer depending on the position, depending on the facility. If you've been waiting for maybe 3 weeks and you haven't heard anything, I would go to that point of contact that was on that vacancy announcement. If they have an email address, I would send an email. If they have a phone number, I would call, leave a message. I would check in. Now, what is a reasonable amount of time? Usually, when you apply to a job, you should receive something within a couple of weeks of the job closing. At max, I would say you would be notified of something within 3 weeks, letting you know that you've applied to the job and you've been qualified for the job or that you were disqualified. So I think that 3 weeks is a very, very reasonable amount of time for you to go in and then ask questions. Thank you, Prudence, for your question, and I hope you get some answers soon. Terry sent in and asked a question concerning the VRE program. She says, can you share information about VRE program? Well, Terry, I can tell you this. VRE is the Veterans Readiness and Employment Program, formerly known as Vocational Rehab and Employment. The services that they provide help with job training, education, employment accommodations, resume development, and job seeking skills coaching for veterans. Other services may be provided to assist the veteran in their job search, but the best thing for you to do is to go onto the website, which we will give you the link. It's www.benefits.va.gov/voc rehab dash or slash index. Please check the chat to get that link. Thank you, Terry, for asking that question. Pierre asked a question. He said, are employers supposed to ask you about your rating breakdown? Pierre, that's a no-no. They should not be asking you about your rating, period. Your rating is your personal business, and it's not a part of the interview process. The rating that Pierre is talking about, just in case you don't know, is a disability rating, and that is not a part of the interview and should not be shared and should not be asked. We have another question that has come in from Ambrosia. Ambrosia asks, is it hard to be rehired if you separated from service during your probationary period? Well, Ambrosia, what I will state to you is that once you've separated, and if you separated during your probationary period, it's just like starting over again with the application process. So I don't want to say that it's hard to be rehired just because you separated during the probationary period. It's just that you would start over. Now, someone who has been a VA employee for possibly 3 years, let's say 3 years, they are a tenured employee and they have a different type of code that they would use coming back in to be rehired. Okay. But during the probationary period, if you leave before your probation is up and you decide you want to come back, it's just like starting over again. I hope that answers your question, Ambrosia. I have a question from Raquel. And Raquel asks, what recommendations do you have for someone like myself who currently works in finance for my local government, looking to transition into HR? I currently have my bachelor's degree in business administration and a minor in HR management. I'm currently working on my Juris Master in employment law and HR risk management. Well, Raquel, first I want to wish you well in your endeavors. It looks like you have a goal and that you're working to get there. Now, you're currently working in finance with your local government. You want to transition to HR. I can tell you that VA has the HR Star program. In that HR Star program, it doesn't matter that you may not have an HR background. You can transfer over into this program and use the experience that you have to come into the HR community. We have a lot of information on HR Star, and you can find that information on vacareers.gov. Thank you for your question, Raquel, and I hope that answers the question for you. We did get a lot of questions that were talking about interviewing. So I want to make sure that I take time with this next question. This question comes in from Anne. Anne says that she's looking to switch agencies, and the VA seems like a great agency to work for. And guess what, Anne? It is. What is your advice for someone looking to switch geographical regions? And can you give me tips for remote interviews? Well, first of all, Anne, thank you for your question. When you talk about working for VA, VA is a great agency. I have been a VA employee for 22 years now, and I have enjoyed every step in my VA career. VA has been a tremendous, I'll say a blessing to me and my family. And when I look at other agencies, I'm not downing any other agency because we all work for the common good of our country. But VA has there's a specialness about VA because we're working to take care of some of America's greatest resources, and that is our veterans. So if you're looking to work in VA, I'm going to give you some tips for that when you're talking about interviewing. But first of all, when you talk about switching to geographical regions, the first thing that you need to do is research. Research is going to be key to determine what factors are important to you. You have to research and look at what the region offers. For instance, when I look at regions, I look at the weather. Why? Because I don't like cold weather. I don't like cold weather at all. So for me, I'm going to try to stay in the South, warm climates. I also have to look at the housing market. If I decide to move to another region, is it affordable for me? How far away is the job from the location that I'm going to be working at if I'm not working remotely? I'm not a commuter. I hate traffic. And if you get in certain regions, traffic is hectic. So those are some of the things you need to look at. What is it that you're looking for when you're talking about moving to geographical regions? I talk about weather, but you also have to look at, if you're in the South, it's possibility of hurricanes. Midwest, You look at tornadoes. Look at the things that interest you. Look at the things that will affect you and will affect your family. So when you're doing research about geographical regions, there are a lot of factors that come in place. Write you out a list. Do the research. Also, when we talk about tips for remote interviews, you have to do your research when it comes to interviewing. Interviewing itself is a skill, and every skill takes practice to achieve success. In practicing for an interview, you'll become more comfortable answering questions about your professional background. Yes, you've done it all these years, but when people start asking you questions, sometimes you'll get tangled up talking about what you do. So, practice builds muscle memory. You should research the organization that you're going to apply to so that you understand its mission, its values, its culture, and also the people that work there. When you have that type of information, you can be more effective when you try to assess if this will be a mutual compatibility for both of you, for yourself and for the organization that you're trying to go to. There are online resources that are available about most organizations. Go to that organization's homepage, check out their news releases, look at some of the employee profiles on LinkedIn, go to their social media pages, and even go on glassdoor.com. Those are just some resources that you can use when you're trying to research an organization. These are all tips for when you're interviewing remotely. I would say also, before your interview, find someone that you trust to do mock interviews. Ask them to participate, ask you questions, and then you answer. And when you answer in a professional manner so that you can get that practice in and get comfortable with answering questions as well as being asked questions. When you're doing a remote interview, always choose clothing that's appropriate for the role that you're applying for. I would say choose clothes that are maybe a step above the role that you're trying to get into. For example, if the role requires business casual attire, choose business professional attire for your interview. Put on a suit and tie or a skirt and blouse. Be conscious, be conscious of the colors and patterns that you wear. I always try to do a solid color, or like this dress I have on today, it's blue with black, just two simple colors and not a lot of different patterns. Ensure that your clothing is clean and neat in appearance. Another thing for remote interviewing, I would say try to find a quiet place that is conducive for an interview. Your cell phones and family interruptions, your dog barking, that could be a distraction for you as well as the interview. You want to decrease as many distractions as you can to allow you to be fully engaged and present in the interview. If you're being interviewed by video, ensure that you have a professional background. Okay. I would say that also that if you're interviewing, don't do a lot of moving around. Okay. I understand that in interviews, you may even get thirsty. I say have something there to quickly quench your thirst. But when you have something, maybe have a bottle of water. You don't want to come on and let the interviewer know who your favorite team is on Saturday. You don't want to come in and let them know, hey, but I root for the Saints on Sunday. It may not even be a good idea to have a glass to let them know that you were in the most elite fighting force in the country. Just a simple bottle of water will do, and keep it to the side. Also, ensure that you have pen and paper to write down questions because you want to make a good impression when you do the interview. They may ask questions that have multiple pieces to it. It's okay to take a pen and jot down notes. That's good. So that way you know that you hit every piece of the question that was asked. If you have to ask them to repeat a question, ask them to repeat. It's okay. but take your time and give a really good answer, the best answer that you have for that question. Getting proper amounts of rest before the interview is important, and it ensures that you're alert and that you're focused. Make sure that when we talk about interview, we remember all of our interview etiquette, okay? Making sure that we're enthusiastic, that we keep eye contact, give clear and concise answers to your interviewer. If a time frame is designated, try to make sure that you stay within that time frame and that you don't go over. Okay? Stay within the allotted time. Following interview etiquette can leave a great impression on the interviewer and demonstrate your professional demeanor. Remember the 5 P's. The 5 P's are: proper preparation prevents poor performance. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And that's all I have as far as the tips for interviewing. I hope that answers your question, and I hope it helps you for your next remote interview. I have a question that came in that says, what is the best way to get feedback after an interview? Earlier, I talked about looking at your job announcement that you applied to, and you'll see a phone number or you'll see an email. It's nothing wrong with contacting someone from HR after the interview to find out, is it possible for the interviewer to call you back to give you feedback? That's what I would do. I have some questions that have come in the chat, and I want to thank you all for sending these questions. If you have any other questions, feel free to go ahead and send them, and we'll put them in the chat, and I'll answer as many as I can before our time runs out. Janice sent in and said, how long is the process when you negotiate an offer and your offer is sent to the program office? Well, Janice, again, I can't give you an exact time frame because it depends on the person who's sending over the information, whether the offer has to be approved by someone else. Kind of hard to give a direct answer for that. But I would say after you receive an offer, no longer than about 2 weeks. That's what I would say. If it's longer than that, feel free to contact HR to find out where they are in the process. Nancy asks, can spouses take advantage of the VRE program? Nancy, what I can say is that with VRE, I'm not very well versed, but I do know that voc rehab is usually for the veteran, unless it's someone who's 100% service connected and they can no longer work. Then in that case, veterans readjustment can help in that situation. But again, I would say go to the link that we provided concerning VRE and see if you can get a better answer there. There's also a number there that you may be able to contact and get your answer from the Veterans Benefits Administration. Thank you for asking your question, Nancy. Erica says, if you're referred to a hiring manager, do you automatically get an interview? Now, that is a good question, Erica. And I will tell you that although you may be referred to the hiring manager, you do not automatically get an interview. In most cases, what happens is everyone that's referred, the hiring manager will go through and they use a matrix. Some hiring managers use a matrix of questions that they have specifically that pertains to the job, and and they'll go through and screen to see who all meets that criteria. And they may just interview the top 10, or they may interview the top 5. It's all based on what the actual hiring manager chooses to do at that point. So I hope that answers your question. And it doesn't pertain to all hiring managers. There are some hiring managers who will interview every candidate that goes through, but they have that discretion to actually do screenings once they actually receive a certificate. I hope that answers your question, Erica. It says, if you leave the VA and are rehired, do you go back to the same step? That question comes in from Wesley. And Wesley, being that I have an HR background, I can tell you that when you go back to VA, if you go into another field, you go into another job, you may not go back to the same grade, you may not go back to the same step. But in some cases, you may be able to do that. And that's when they consider what we call highest previous rate. Sometimes you are able to use the highest previous rate if the job that you left previously is the same job or very similar to, has the same administrative or clinical duties as before, and you may be able to go in at that time using highest previous rate. But even that has to be approved. So thank you, Wesley, for asking that question, and I hope that answered your question. Wade says, what about direct hires? Do I need to interview? Well, Wade, I can say this. It depends, again, on the hiring official. If the hiring official reviews the application or reviews your resume or CV and determines that they want to give you a job, they can do that. It's discretionary. It's up to the interviewer. It's up to the selecting official. Now, however, myself being in management previously, I don't want to hire anyone without doing an interview. There's a lot of different things that could go on there. I want to make sure that the person that I hire is the right fit for the job, and that takes conversation. That would take an interview. So again, it's discretionary. So the last one, my last question, it says, does employment with the VA impact VA disability? That question came to us from Ebony. Now, Ebony, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking concerning that. I can share with you that I am a disabled veteran and I work for the VA. So working, it depends on your rating and it depends on the type of rating that you receive, whether it would impact your employment with the VA. I can't give you an exact question because that is pretty broad, but I hope that the answer that I provided to your question helps you in your understanding. Now, I can take questions on LinkedIn. If you send me a question on LinkedIn or you send us questions here, we can get back to you. We will try to get back to you with the answer that best fits your question. Today, I have to say this has been a very good session, great questions, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. I hope that the questions that we answered provides you with some type of relief or provides you with the answer that you need. For those of you who submitted questions, thank you for taking the time to reach out to us and being a part of our broadcast. We appreciate your interest. And if you submitted questions that didn't get answered, understand we will reach back out to you and get those questions answered as quickly as possible. Looking ahead, if you have any questions or comments that you would like us to address in future broadcasts, be sure to reach out to us and let us know. Your question is what makes these episodes happen. Finally, if you have additional questions that weren't answered, know that you can go on to www.vacareers.va.gov or just drop the comment on here or in LinkedIn and on our social media accounts, and we will answer your questions. Thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you next week for Talk About It Tuesday.